Changes in technology have had the biggest impact on the genres?
Well, the 50s was trying to use technical advances such as working colour production, and it allowed them to compete with TV to make better quality films.
In what decade do you think horror dealt with more realistic storylines?
Well, the 60s had more of a teen audience, so they wanted more of a mature storyline. Because they were obviously developing and getting older, so they wanted something that was more realistic. And the 60s allowed more nudity and violence, so it would appeal to that audience more.
How does horror now compare with 19th century novels?
The novels were gothic, and then the film allows more gore and a visual image of violence.
There are many subgenres of horror. An example is action, which combines evil and supernatural in horror films. It includes themes such as gore and zombie. Films of this subgenre include Dawn of the Dead, The Purge, and The Blade. Body horror is another example. It shows the deconstruction of the human body. Films which fit into this subgenre are Teeth, The Invasion, and Cabin Fever. The films are often graphic and violent and may deal with disease, decay, and mutilation. Comedy horror enables a parody feel to the subgenre. They are not as scary as other horrors, as there is no humour in the other horror subgenres. The use of comedy relaxes the audience, as it is not meant to bring fright upon them. An example of films in this subgenre include Shaun of the Dead and Scary Movie. Gothic horror films usually include features such as castles, dungeons, to represent the specific era of the film set on. The first ever horror film, The Devil's Castle, is set in a medieval castle, which also implies that it is of the Gothic genre.
All films must have a certificate rating. These advise the audience on who the producers of a specific film want to view it. There are 5 common certificate ratings which film industries use. The lowest is universal. This rating is aimed at ages 4 and above and is generally aimed at a family audience. The next rating is PG, which stands for parental guidance. This means a particular film may contain scenes which is inappropriate for a child and therefore need to be accompanied by an adult. 12 is another certificate rating. No child is able to watch a film of this rating if they are under the age without being with a parent. If a film has a certificate rating of 15, it cannot be watched without parental consent. The film may contain scenes of swearing and violence which is inappropriate for people younger than 15 years old. 18 certificate ratings may be more strict than the others because it will contain scenes which will be disturbing for a younger audience.
There are many iconic horror directors that are included in the film industry. James Wan is known for films such as Saw, Insidious and The Conjuring. The director experiments with multiple subgenres, however he builds suspense well through all of them. He aimed to make Saw claustrophobic, and instead of using establishing shots, he used lots of interior and close-up shots to keep footage intense. He has a trademark of using ventriloquist dolls, which is seen in Dead Silence and Saw. Alfred Hitchcock produced films and directed them from 1922 to 1976, with a total of 53 credited horror films. He is known for Psycho, Vertigo, Rear Window and North by Northwest. Legendary thriller director, but incorporates suspense into all of his films and into his black and white style. Stanley Kubrick has experimented with every film genre, however he brings a dark element to each of them. This is seen in A Clockwork Orange, The Shining, A Space Odyssey. He uses symbolism, which is seen in A Clockwork Orange, as one of the characters expresses his life choices through the arts, such as music and literature. Lucio Fulci is known as the godfather of gore. He produced and wrote films through the 70s and 80s. The City of the Living Dead and Zombie are 2 of his well-known films. He uses a doctor, reporter and policeman as the main male character roles, and he has even cameoed as these roles as himself. Finally, Wes Craven is a very well-known and successful horror film director. He is well known for creating Freddy Krueger from The Nightmare on Elm Street. He also created Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which was nominated for Best Picture at the 1995 Independent Spirit Awards. The Scream trilogy has also increased his success, which won MTV's Best Movie in 1996.
Audiences usually expect high-intensity scenes as well as suspense. Monsters, demons and possessions are common horror film creatures which create fear within the audience. Darkness is a common connotation of horror, which creates isolation and fear. Darkness is typically used in both setting and lighting, as films are commonly set in a forest or abandoned dark environment. The movies aim to create shock, suspense, tension and even sympathy as innocent characters get harmed in the films. Horror films are predictable due to typical conventions. Sound creates suspense build-up as the audiences they know something will happen, however they don't know exactly what. Death is common and is in almost every horror film, which further creates sympathy.